Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and we have a show for you tonight. Not much intel as it stands, but various things going on. But we will be covering a number of items tonight, and let's get into all the usual. Link for the show, www.spreaker.com/user/8955881. Or you can also listen live and visit the archive site that has a number of articles of Chloe's and grounding and shielding and centering and all that stuff. And Chloe's latest stuff is all on there at thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and a Facebook social media alternative called MeWe.com, also called Truth, Honour and Integrity. But if you're struggling to find that, send an email to truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. You can also send in questions for the show. Please try and keep the emails short. I am struggling for time. I do work full time and do this. So go a bit easy on the emails. And we have the People's Club donations website link, everything about the foundation on the peoplesclub.org. Lots going on. Awful lots going on. Some of it good, some of it not, some of it fake, some of it real, and no one seems to know which way to go these days. Well, maybe we'll cover a few things like that in the show tonight. Let's get into the some of the news that's going on, of which there's volumes of it, particularly this week. Hiring and firing and house meetings and with Star Trek people, or certainly it looked like a Star Trek person anyway, Mr. Zuckerberg with a silent F, and all things going on. But first story is Lockheed Martin, and they've been informed by the Pentagon this week to reduce the Pentagon's current $1.1 trillion estimate to own and operate the F-35 jets. $1.1 trillion for planes. Imagine how many people you could feed with $1.1 trillion. And currently this is the world's costliest weapons program, according to the Defense Department's latest annual program overview. And Lockheed Martin must embrace much-needed supply chain management and affordability initiatives to cut costs on the next generation of the stealth fighter. The $1.1 trillion estimate to sustain the F-35 fleet through 2077. Really, I don't think we're all going to be around that long, but still, was compiled in 2015 by the Pentagon's Independent Cost Assessment Office, but has not been updated since. Indeed. Now, the Pentagon said this week that the estimate will be updated next year before acquisition officials meet to decide whether the program should enter full production. The report acknowledges that under current forecasts, the projected F-35 sustainment outlays are far too costly, and given planned fleet growth, future US service operations and support budgets will be strained. Now, it was reported last week that the US Air Force may have to cut its F-35 purchases by at least 1/3, or about 590 jets, if it can't find ways to reduce operations and support costs by as much as 38% over the next decade. You can reduce it to zero, if you ask me. Much use it gives to America, the people, or any country of the world, being honest. Now, the pedogate thing seems to be alive and well, and certain things, mainly hidden in the background, are continuing to be leaked out. And the latest one is Backpage.com, which was seized by the federal government last week. This particular is a popular classified advertising website, and the site is frequently used for sex trafficking of adults and children. One has to question how long that's been running and why no one saw it. Why now? The Justice Department says the site had earned $500 million in revenue from prostitution since it was created, and the government is currently in the process of blocking the website completely. Parts of it are still accessible, while other parts may trigger a notice specifically saying the feds have seized it. On Friday, some visitors to the site were greeted with a message that said Backpage.com and affiliated websites have been seized as part of an enforcement action by the FBI, the Postal Inspection Service. That's an interesting name for various reasons. For those of you who followed David Wynn Miller, you might get an idea what that means. And the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I wonder, do they investigate themselves? Maybe not. Another agency participating in the action is the Justice Department's of Child Exploitation and Obscenity section, really. And the message went on to say that the additional information would be released by the Justice Department next Friday. Now, last year, a Senate report alleged Backpage knowingly concealed evidence of child sex trafficking. So it was the Senate reported it last year, and they've only just shut it down, really. Through its editing by deleting words, phrases and images indicative of criminality. Senate investigators said words like young, little girl and innocent were removed, while the remainder of the ad would be published. Well, it couldn't be published if it had been shut down. But there you go. A big concern is the grocery sector, not only in America but other countries as well. And it's kind of a beleaguered sector, and it currently faces a new threat: the possible loss of tens of billions of dollars of spending by low-income shoppers, as the Trump administration is pushing to rein in food stamp spending by at least $130 billion over a decade, or a 20% reduction of current annual budget of $63 billion. The move would constitute one of the biggest reductions in program-sponsored purchases for retailers in yearly terms since the recession. This and other proposals from the Republicans intend to overhaul the nation's food stamp program as lawmakers begin renegotiating the Farm Bill, a sprawling $900 billion piece of legislation that allots about 80% of its funding to nutrition assistance and is set to expire at the end of September. Some participants may no longer receive food stamps if lawmakers approve stricter work requirements included in proposals by Republicans on the House Agriculture Committee. Yes, there is a small number abusing it, but there's let's not forget that there's 1 in 6 children living in poverty in this country. And so there's far simpler ways of making spending cuts. And the simplest one, given the inaction, is to cut the whole military bill to zero. Absolute zero, until they do something that is benefit for we the people. Then all that funds can go and feed all the people. The 1.1 trillion for planes while people are starving. And cutting food stamps is not a good idea. That's not for them by the people in anyone's book. Earlier this week, the entity known as Hillary Clinton, whoever she may be, or it may be, made an appearance in New York, of all places, at an exclusive women's club called The Wing. Yeah, Wing Nut, more like it. And the event was put together by co-founders, check these names out, Audrey Gelman and Lauren Kassan, in honour of Hillary. What? They're celebrating, they're killing people now. Really? But then perhaps when we finish this piece, you'll maybe understand why. They were able to converse on a new book, What Happened, Her Legacy. Yeah, does it really matter? And unsurprisingly, her book was on Russian meddling, but unsurprisingly it left out that she signed a deal for uranium one to the Russians, but obviously that's in Hillary and Democratic minds is not classed as meddling. I digress. It was quite the typical post-election conversation to be expected from Anne. However, on this occasion there was one significant difference. This time Hillary was speaking to a group of women who practice witchcraft. And it all comes out now, doesn't it? And openly call themselves a coven. Really? The day after we spoke about covens going down, Hillary perhaps deciding to create her own. So, according to the Wing's Instagram page, we're a coven, not a sorority. During the event, Anne was awarded an honorary lifetime Wing membership and was welcomed by the interviewers as the newest member of our coven. Indeed. For decades, it has been rumoured that Anne had practiced witchcraft, go figure, and was involved in various covens throughout the years. Most famously, former Clinton employee Larry Nichols described numerous times in which Hillary would practice witchcraft with a Californian-based coven one week, and the next week she would be going to church as if nothing happened. But until Anne lost the one-horse race election, there was thought to be a concerted effort to hide her visits to these covens, yet it seems to be joining self-proclaimed covens right out in the open and in the media. Once again, has little to say on the matter, and the Wing is fairly open about their organisation being a coven, though still somewhat subtle. Oftentimes they are simply referred to as an executive members-only feminist club. Indeed. Perhaps members should, perhaps the whole of the alt media should expose them like we expose NXIVM. Now there's at least 3 people being arrested, including an actress. You want these people shut down? Act on it. Don't just let them get away with it. Last month there was a press leak that revealed that Google has been working with the US Department of Defense, no change there, on a drone program called Project Maven. Now, Maven is a Yiddish word meaning accumulator of knowledge, which is being developed to scan images in drone footage and identify targets. And prior to it being reported in the news, this project was unknown to even most Google employees. Even those who were working on different aspects of the projects. This is how they have accomplished so many things. even in the one organization, you could be building a neutron bomb, but if someone's just making little plates and little screws and little wires and all the integrated circuitry, that unless they know what it's geared for, they have no idea, and then they just collect all the pieces, and the ones that really know put it all together. So you've got people who are working on these projects, and none of them have an idea of the consequences or what it entails. Compartmentalization at its finest in Google. And the company was so secretive about the project and kept their employees so compartmentalized that thousands of talented engineers had no clue that they were actually aiding a war effort. Yes, against their own people. Now, many of those employees are speaking out and demanding that the company cancel its work on the controversial program. And this week, a letter that was signed by over 3,100 Google employees, addressed to Google CEO Sundar Pichai, stated that they didn't want to be involved in the business of war. So we have the Google employees fighting back. Good. There was, in the midst of everyone's, or lots of people anyway, having YouTube's blocked and all kinds of other stuff, being classed as fake news, and Facebook deciding which news is valid and which news is not. There was an interview by Abby Martin's Empire Files, featuring the journalist Max Blumenthal. And Mr. Blumenthal was spotlighting rising militarism in Israel. And lo and behold, YouTube blocked it in 28 countries. It's always about them, innit? Including Israel and the UK. No surprise there, same country. I don't care who doesn't like that. It's fact. Same country. For allegedly violating local laws. Just notified by YouTube that Abby Martin's interview with Max Blumenthal has been blocked from being viewed in 28 countries to comply with local laws. Actions disabled and warnings for viewers elsewhere. The program's official Twitter account related on Tuesday. The show was entitled Jewish American on Israel's Fascism, No Hope for Change from Within was the title, and the episode features a discussion between Martin and the journalist about the increasingly militaristic, racist attitude of Israelis towards Palestinians. I can't disagree with that. I would say, although I don't have figures, that it's kind of unfair to brand all Israeli people. There's a lot of Israeli people who want an end to this war, but while you've got clowns in office and militaristic clowns and certain rogue agencies in that country running things, you're not going to get much change. And from an Israeli point of view, never mind a Palestinian. Those people are just not interested in peace. They never were. You know, if they were interested in peace, here's a solution. One that I mentioned 30 years ago. Why don't they demilitarize Israel and put select troops from numerous countries, in fact all 209 countries, along the wall under the banner of the UN? You won't do it because the people that are running the country known as Israel have no intentions of creating peace whatsoever. It's all about the caliphate. For those who don't understand this, go and look at Israel's border before the 1967 war and compare it to now, and then go and look at the bordering countries and watch the urban sprawl. I warned about this caliphate a long time ago. Lebanon, Syria now, southern Turkey, it's all there. Wall will go right across if they get their way. Facebook, it's not bad enough. YouTube deciding what news is valid for us and what's not. Facebook has been badly exposed over the last few months, and it's been notified this week that it was in talks with top hospitals and other medical groups as recently as last month about a proposal to share data from the social networks of their most vulnerable patients. Just think about that for a minute. Why is a social media site involved in hospitals or medical? And the idea was to build profiles of people that included their medical conditions, information that health systems have, as well as social and economic factors gleaned from Facebook. Facebook said the project is on hiatus so it can focus on other important work, including doing a better job of protecting people's data. And the comedians as well. Yeah, they protect it so they can bundle it all up and then sell it to people. And Facebook has asked several major US hospitals to share its data about their patients. So much for hospital privacy, such as illnesses and prescription information for a proposed research project. I thought that was a government thing to do, not a social media. Facebook was intending to match it up with user data it had collected and help the hospitals figure out which patients might need special care or treatment. Yeah, probably other ones Zuckerberg got balls on. Liars. The proposal never went past the planning phases, according to Facebook, and is being put on pause after the Cambridge Analytica data leak scandal raised public concerns of how Facebook and others collect and use detailed information about Facebook users. I've noticed Google's changing. I received an email today from Google that they're going to change the parameters of how people's data can be used or not. I suggest people actually go and view that and actually do it. Don't wait till after May the 25th. If you don't want your data going out, go and fix it. It's something only you can do. But don't come crying to people further down the line and going, they've been stealing my data, when they have given you an opportunity to turn around and go, you're not sharing it. Too often you just leave things like that, myself included. You know, you get letters from mortgage companies asking about send this letter back. I notice they don't do it on an email where you can just click on it and go, no, I don't want. It's always that little bit extra. You've got to put a stamp on it and go and post it. And most people go, I can't be bothered doing that. And then we face the consequences of it. Another item on Facebook, the Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak is shutting down his Facebook account altogether as the social media giant struggles to cope with the worst privacy crisis in its history. In an email to USA Today, Wozniak says Facebook makes a lot of advertising money from personal details provided by users. So they're making vast volumes of money on your information. I don't recall them sending me a check. Rumour has it there's going to be a class action lawsuit. That'll be the way to go. And it'll probably end, if it goes through, and the projected payout being somewhere in the region of $17,000 per head. That will end Facebook once and for all. That's why we set up MeWe. And he says all the profits of Facebook are based on the user's info, but the user's get none of the profits back, and so he's cancelled his account. Where are we? How many got to go on? Okay. FBI this week raided the offices of Michael Cohen, a long-time personal lawyer of US President Donald Trump, and the law enforcement acted on a referral from Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who's investigating suspected Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Is it just me, or didn't they say there was no evidence about 2 months ago? Oh well, it's that time loop again, and Mandela effects. Officials in New York seized privileged communications between Mr. Cohen and his clients, and his lawyer said in a statement after the raid, the documents regarding a payment to a porn actress was also seized, and the US and Mr. Cohen, who has come under increasing public scrutiny since he admitted to making a $130,000 payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels. They're trying to get him on campaign donations. Scotland Yard admitted... yeah, you remember the... Carillion, that's the British government services company. America has Serco and others running government services. Carillion went bankrupt, and I said you will see the effects of it. Well, here's one of them. Scotland Yard, which is a bit like the FBI in America, admitted it has run out of the detectives to investigate murders, as 6 teenagers were knifed in just 90 minutes in another blood-soaked night in the capital. Apparently things are getting really ugly in London at the moment. And the force was forced to call in neighbouring City of London police to carry out an inquiry into a killing in East London this week. And it took the highly unusual action as the capital's soaring murder toll is now at 55. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick, perhaps I should have said that for the right before the first music break, you'll find out why later, admitting it was a very worrying time as she was forced to deny her officers had lost control of crime. And more government services. Gatwick Airport also was forced to temporarily shut its runway 4 times over the weekend, they say because of staff sickness, causing flights to be diverted and delays. Only one air traffic controller out of a scheduled 3 was at work in the control tower at the time, and the runway was closed to enable the controller to take mandatory breaks. It's all going down in the UK, literally down the pan. Vatican police have jumped in on the act, whether it's a sign of the times or this is sacrificial lamb will remain to be seen. But they arrested a clergyman and a top diplomat who has reportedly been identified as a suspect in a child pornography case. Monsignor Carlo Alberto Capella was detained by the Holy See security officials last Saturday, and the suspect who had formerly worked as a Vatican City diplomat to the United States, but suddenly was recalled from his position in Washington last year. The US State Department identified Capella as having possibly violated child pornography laws, and it is also alleged the Monsignor downloaded and disseminated child pornography during a visit to Canada. I'm sure Kevin Ann would be interested in that. The press office for the Pope has addressed the allegations against Capella, saying he was arrested regarding Article 10 of Vatican state law, which relates to child pornography. If found guilty of violating this law, he'll be let off. Actually, he could face up to 12 years in prison, but we'll see. Capella is currently in custody at police barracks near St. Peter's Square in the Vatican, and this morning, at the suggestion of the promoter of justice, that's a laugh inside the Vatican, the judge instructor of the Vatican City State Court issued a warrant for the arrest of Mr. Capella, and like I said, he's been held at the barracks of the Corps of the Gendarmerie. Mr. Francis, Pope Francis, has promised a crackdown on clerical abuse, and in 2017 the Pontiff vowed to have zero tolerance for sexual abuse, which has tarnished the Church for decades. Does he look in the mirror? Maybe not. Washington next. Special counsel is investigating a payment made to Mr. Trump's foundation by a Ukrainian steel magnate for a talk during the campaign, according to the three people briefed on the matter as part of a broader examination of streams of foreign money to Mr. Trump and his associates in the years leading up to the election. Funny, I seem to remember Mr. Obama taking loads of foreign donations and nothing ever happened there, did it? Oh well. In response, the company handed over documents about $150,000 donation that the Ukrainian billionaire Viktor Pinchuk made in September 2015 to the Donald J. Trump Foundation in exchange for a 20-minute appearance by Mr. Trump that month through a video link to a conference in Kiev. $150,000 for a 20-minute phone call. Zero for a 3-hour show each week. I think I'm in the wrong business. The latest hiring firing that's been going on. Last Sunday, National Security spokesman Mike Anton told Politico on Monday that he was leaving the administration, and John Bolton's arrival in the West Wing is already causing major upheaval among the ranks of the West Wing's National Security and Homeland Security staffers. It was reported that Bolton had called Homeland Security Advisor Bossert into his office on Tuesday morning and told him that he was being fired. Now, Mr. Bossert was an ally of former National Security Advisor Mr. McMaster, who was recently fired. You just lose track with it. And also announced yesterday, as predicted, Paul Ryan is quitting after the elections in November. You'll find there'll be a raft of them not reapplying. How that all pans out, we all have to wait and see. Okay. A senior United Nations official has claimed that Syrian rebels may have used chemical weapons against the government forces. Carla Del Ponte said evidence from casualties and medical staff indicated that rebel forces in the civil war had used the deadly nerve agent sarin, not the government. Oops. Our investigators have been in neighbouring countries interviewing victims and doctors and field hospitals, and there are strong concrete suspicions, but not yet incontrovertible proof of the use of sarin gas. This was in an interview with a Swiss-Italian television, and this was use on the part of the opposition, the rebels, not by the government authorities. Of course, it is all played out which country's military decided to act while the confusion was ongoing, and which country did decide to act while all that confusion was ongoing. Well, you guess it. UK proxy country Israel decided to bomb Syria as well while all that was going on. And yet, I don't hear the outcry over that. But that's all okay according to the media. It was Assad. Yeah, right. You tried that a few years ago and that stitch-up job failed then, and it will fail now. They seem to think that we're all stupid, all have memories like a goldfish. Isn't it another story that's obviously been making more news in the UK? Was it happened there? The UK has gone anti-Russian. Everything's Russia's fault now. Just like here, dogs fouls the pavement, Russians' fault. It's just getting beyond a joke. But I was under the impression, maybe it's just me, that those people that were poisoned died, or at least one of them did. But seems that neither of them died. So I'm not so sure what all the fussing's about. Yet again, more distraction. But Yulia Skripal, who was the poisoned daughter of Russian ex-spy Sergei, has been discharged from hospital this week, and the 33-year-old left Salisbury District Hospital on Monday and has been taken to a secure location. Bye. The hospital said this is not the end of her treatment, but marks a significant milestone forward. Her 66-year-old father remains in hospital and is recovering more slowly than Yulia, and doctors hope he will be discharged in due course. The pair were taken into hospital on March the 4th after being exposed to the toxic nerve agent Novichok. Now, the British authorities, Porton and Down, declared it was nothing to do with Russia, and then the government did a massive about turn, and on goes the discourse. Seems to me they're just creating all kinds of events in the media where people have no idea what's going on anymore. It's counter and counteract with the same news. Assad did it, no, it was the rebels. No, it never happened. Yes, it did. The Russians poisoned them. No, they didn't. It was someone in the UK. But that doesn't fit the agenda, so let's blame the Russians. Let's ignore the doctors, and let's ignore the military research that did the testing on the nerve agent. And it didn't come from Russia. It just goes on and on and on and on. Right. Should I put a piece in before top of the hour? What's the first piece? No. We'll have a music break. And and then some indirect intel, but no, there is no, as it stands now, there's no intel for this week. People are rather busy, but we're going to play this song to Dick Cheney and all his other merry band of sadistic and satanic brothers. So enjoy this. Hi all, and we're going to go into a few things that are going on currently, and I'm going to spend the next most of the next hour or so talking about us and how we go about things and how we're not going about things. And this is reflective in a couple of the op-ed pieces tonight, and how we deal with things and where we stand. So with regards to the intel, there has been a number of incidents involving ships, planes going down, Algeria, military planes, numbers in around Nevada, California, and a few other places, and incidents with 2 of Trump's helicopters. One, the engine failed, and 2 fires recently in the Trump Tower. The recent one was a ruse to cause a distraction, which led to the issue with Michael Cohen and others in that building. We'll hear more on that at a later date. White powder mailed to Ivanka. None of these are a coincidence, and the reason being, it's all out war now. I don't think we're gonna be hidden all behind the scenes for much longer. There is rumours at this point that Mr. Trump has been co-opted, but it's not confirmed. The man's under heavy threat, and I've made my position quite clear with Mr. Trump. If he does the right thing for him by the people, I'll stand by him. If he doesn't, then I won't. I'm not interested in personalities. I never have been. It's there is some disturbing information that's come out this week. Obviously, the Syria thing, which I'll cover shortly, and it's a case of let's see what plays out. But things are literally on a knife edge for so many things now. Be it war, be it going forward, be it going backwards. It's getting down to the serious business and literally the end times, however that may be. Now, for those of you with a nervous disposition, the end times doesn't necessarily mean the biblical BS. It can be the end of an era for the control system and a new beginning for us. That's all still on the cards, but there's some serious concerns in the past week of decisions that have been made that are not appearing to be beneficial for we the people. I won't ignore it. I just won't. Like I said, I'm not interested in personalities, I'm not interested in parties, I'm only interested in people who fight the good fight for the people only. Now, it may well be all part of a strategy, and there is a lot of strategic games going on. The fact that the intel has not been released this week may be indicative of that, because everything is very fluid. It's the best to say. There's threats going on. Death threats are continuing on the team. And also offers to step down. Huge financial offers to step down. And I may cover that later. Now, people with reasonable memories, I think it was said last week or Drake time 2 weeks ago, where I stated about certain appointments being made in the Trump administration and how it would play out. Perhaps this next piece is indicative of that timeline that I gave out and all fits in. CIA Director Mike Pompeo did not disclose last year that he owned a business linked to the Chinese government-owned company. And Pompeo, who was recently nominated by Trump to be the Secretary of State, failed to disclose his business ties to a Chinese government oil and gas company in the questionnaire he was required to fill out to be confirmed as the CIA Director by the Senate. That omission could be an issue for him during his confirmation hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee today, which I haven't had time to check up on what happened. And senators did not bring up his links to the Chinese government during his confirmation to be CIA Director last year. He was confirmed by a 66-32 vote, with 14 Democrats voting in favour of his confirmation. So maybe that fits in with the graph of how things are playing out. Now, with regards to, there's a lot being said about Syria, and I've covered some of it. Some are saying it didn't happen, some are saying it did. Some are saying it was the Syrian government, Assad, and others are saying it's the rebels. And unless you're kind of on the ground, I don't think anyone really knows. But I'm more concerned with the rhetoric coming out of the White House, and this is what's raised concerns about Trump, whether he's been threatened or blackmailed to be coerced with the rogue elements. If not, then with regards to the threat of all-out war and raining missiles on Syria, I will remind people that Mr. Trump said exactly the same in regards to North Korea. And nothing happened, did it? What did happen is North Korea met with China. North Korea met with the South Korea counterpart for the first time in at least 2 decades, if memory serves me correctly. And they're talking about reunification. So at this point, I would say do not fall for the fear porn and propaganda just yet. But always keep it in the back of your mind. Now, an update on the wall piece, which disturbed some. But further information has come out from Amnesty International this week, which reaffirms what I said in that particular piece. Is an investigation found that 80%, 4 out of every 5, of women and girls crossing into America by the way of Mexico are raped during their journey. Now, this is up from even the previous scandalous estimate of 60%, according to an Amnesty International report. And it's shown that not only are women raped in shocking numbers during these immigration treks, and the problem seems to be getting far worse. You know, of course, there's an awful lot of other stuff that I covered in that show 2 weeks ago. But that's another problem even before they get to the border of what's going on. And in response to that, over 200 members of the Arizona National Guard are now en route to the Mexican border to support the clampdown on illegal immigration and drug trafficking. That's the minimal explanation for it. Defence Secretary James Mattis authorised the deployment of up to 4,000 troops to the border last Friday following an executive order from Donald Trump. The troops will be under the command of state governors but will be paid for with federal money until September. A lot of things ending in September. The budget ends in September. Maybe that's a clue of things to come. More Arizona National Guard troops will follow on Tuesday, and the state's Republican Governor Doug Ducey said on Monday the troops will be stationed near Tucson and Yuma and will assist the federal border control personnel. Notice they didn't involve the Texas Rangers. Bush cartel. Right, let's get into, that's the bigger pieces. This is a few things that I wanted to cover this week, and it obviously is topical. It appears America is rip-roaring towards a full-on soap opera. The actions of the government, and I'm not going to mention individuals because it's neither here nor there, it's both parties. In fact, it's all the politicians, and their behaviour is nothing short of a disgrace and a complete embarrassment to this nation. If they're the people that represent this country, we're in bad shape. And it's filled, knock the mic over, we're filled with theatrical live events, whether real or not, where politicians play the role of damning duality, whether it's good guy, bad guy, Republican or Democrat, for the people, against the people, white lives matter or black lives matter, hire or fire, male or female, he said, she said, you're with us or against us. And it's all played out and laid out, for that matter, by the portal people, better known as the mainstream media. Now, if ever people doubted about the two worlds theory, it's all right there in your face. They are setting a theatrical play that bears no resemblance to real life or our reality. Look at this week alone. FBI raids the home of the president's lawyer and removes material related to whether Trump slept with a slapper 12 years ago. I mean, what in the name of Satan's portion has that got to do with running a country for and by its people? Nothing. Does proving Trump slept with her solve poverty, crime, unless you think having consensual sex with another is now a crime? Does it solve homelessness, corruption, fraud, or the 350,000 children that go permanently missing or die of malnutrition every single week? Does it stop kids from being used as sex toys, forced labour, organ harvesting, adrenochrome suppliers, being ritual sacrificed or being consumed? For those who are new to the show, yes, consumed means being eaten. Well, does it? $100 million? Show me a single person in power that hasn't abused their position and garnered sexual favours be it male or female, and I'll call them a liar. Unless you look like Dianne Feinstein. They've all done it. The key is how many have done it with children, not who's having extramarital affairs. It's not new. It happens every day within our own communities. People having a bit on the side to spice up life or for whatever other reason. But since when does it become an over $100 million investigation that started off with all things Russian is bad and ended up with a voyeuristic witch hunt? Where does it all end? What's it supposed to prove? Now, I could spend the rest of this show highlighting better things to do with that money for the people, or spend the same amount of time routing out the cesspool of filth in political circles, all media, the police, judges, agencies and the military. I could spend a whole other show giving examples of whose homes should have been raided by the FBI, but one will suffice: Hillary Clinton, better known as Anne. What about her off-the-side sexual exploits FBI? Huma Abedin is fairly mild compared to the numerous little girls she has taken advantage of. Yes, I did say that. Did the Huma Abedin affair not cause concerns? No, you used the cure for all ills and the cover-ups termed national security, which is a veiled hint to nationalist socialism, aka fascism, and with a name like Mueller running it, how convenient is that? Of course, Hillary has various other criminalities attached to her, like the between 1 and 200 people of those who challenged or went to expose her, and how they all mysteriously just died. Or like how she signed an agreement before the election took place to sell all of America's current and future in-ground assets, figuring she'd already won the election and let's not wait around, she just signed off on it. Where was the FBI when that took place? Someone who commits high treason against the country they profess to love and is completely ignored. But someone sleeps with a rather loose woman 12 years ago is valid enough to waste vast sums of our money and vast resources to do what, Mr. Mueller? Impeach the president for having sexual liaisons 10 years before becoming the president? Really? I recall a former president doing it right in the very office, not only office of power, but actual White House, and being impeached. But of course, you and I both know, Mr. Mueller, that wasn't the real reason Bill Clinton was impeached, was it? No. Like Trump last week, threatening to pull out of the troops out of Syria, Bill Clinton refused Tony Blair's request to invade Iraq in 1998. Didn't report that, did you? Bill Clinton was forced, against his then wishes, to invade the country then known as Yugoslavia, now known as Serbia. He reluctantly agreed to Yugoslavia, but refused to invade Iraq, a British request. So what happened to Bill Clinton? In came the Mossad agent known as Monica Lewinsky, and a few blowjobs later, and a national scandal all unfolded, Bill then gets into debt, defending himself to the tune of $7 million, which was deliberate. And who steps in then? The Bushes, to bail him out, with conditions, of course. And stage 2 was the fake election of 2000, where not the people decided an election, and I mean that loosely, we've never really decided an election, but corrupt judges that were part of the Bush cartel, and boom, the idiotic cokehead signs off on war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Lots of free money to siphon off for the black budgets and the slush funds during wartime, isn't there, Mr. Mueller, as you well know, along with dickhead Cheney. So what we have now is clear evidence that this country is ran by psychopathic war hawks. And if anyone threatens to disrupt their global war and destruction plan, we will spend $100 million plus digging for dirt, no matter how flimsy that dirt may be. Now, personally, I don't care whether you like Trump or not. That is irrelevant. But what I do care about is the flagrant abuse of our system, flagrant wasting of our resources, flagrant waste of our finances, flagrant waste of our children fighting their insane, never-ending wars that serves no purpose, gains no benefit for any country, never mind America, and only seeks to serve the depraved minds of what in real terms is a few lost or never had souls intent on doing the most despicable acts ever perpetrated by any living creature. And yet, amidst all that, is by and large ignored by the ignorant and frankly stupid public, whilst they all lap up the salacious details of someone else having been caught out in an extramarital affair. That is nobody's business outside of the man, wife and the extra. It's nobody's business. Least of all, paraded in a public arena that involves services for the people. But until people deal with their own shadow sides, this type of voyeurism of watching and salivating at someone else's slipping up or making a mistake in their lives, so it covers up their own mistakes and failures, then this tragic theatre show will continue to run, and we'll have sequel after sequel after sequel after sequel. Now, at the beginning of this piece, I mentioned the duality choices we have been given. That's all you have. Another limiting program, like the word normal. Too many have forgotten there is always a third choice, your own. Even people in the awake community miss that. I don't know whether to vote for Trump or Hillary. Why? Why accept that choice? Vote for neither. But you can't do that, wasting a vote. But you know, it's not an election, it's a C-election. So it doesn't matter whether you vote or you don't. They just invite dead people in to vote. Or they have counties where the turnout is 140%. And you still think your vote counts? Not really. It only counts when you elect who you want, not what they give you. So it's your choice, your free will, your own mind. And are you going to sit there like you are in some giant pharmacy store waiting to be given your latest dose of poison theatre, or get off your knees and say, fuck you to the system. I want my own choice, I want to exercise my own free will, and I want to use my own mind. I want a better world for all, while standing in my own sovereignty and personal responsibility. And my answer would be, do it. Groundhog Day sequels are getting very boring, and frankly, from an overview point of view, absurdly insane to watch people hand over their power, their thoughts, their life force and their energy to complete psychopaths. Talk time is long over. It is actions that are required now, and we need millions to remind the so-called authorities running this country enough is enough. And if your first thought is, what can I do, Thomas? Think again, please, and exercise your mind and your free will. You just have to wake up and use it. Next piece I want to cover: awareness of targeted weaponry and attacks. I've often spoken about the dangers of technology and how everything appears to be the future is actually the past. But I'm going to cover a few things given what took place, an alleged chemical attack in Syria, which Russia and others contest actually never took place, and several pictures and video produced of the so-called event. But what if they were from an alleged chemical attack a few years ago? Would we know? Is it a coincidence that that particular attack comes the week after Trump threatened troop withdrawal in Syria? Now, the cabal and the neo-hawks in Washington, along with the psychopathic Zionists in Israel, are desperate to keep wars going or start a new one. Desperate. As the money is provided carte blanche in Western countries for war, and yet the same money is never made available for the people whose money they're actually spending for food stamps, for homeless, for health. Funny that, isn't it? A war breaks out and here's X billion or here's X trillion. We have a homeless problem. Well, we've got no funding. And we tolerate that shit. The majority of people in this country have forgotten it's our money they have, not theirs. Governments don't have money, they have ours. It's like banks. They don't have money either. They have our money. If everyone took their money out, all the banks collapse. Because they have none. But they use it for their own ends and benefits. 7 trillion of our money wasted in Iraq and Afghanistan. 17 years we've been in Afghanistan, and the world's so-called greatest military hasn't yet beaten a ragtag army that has no planes or ships. Really? In anyone's book, that is a catastrophic failure, and long past time the heads of the top brass of the military should have been fired for basic incompetency. Greatest, largest, most expensive, most technological military in the world And 17 years they haven't beaten a ragtag army. And no one got fired for it. But it's all part of the theatre. As one American military general said, war creates jobs, so we shouldn't complain. The response back was, it maims and kills people as well. The general said in reply, well, maimed people create jobs as well when you fix them. Spoken like a true synth, devoid of compassion, empathy, or anything resembling a true human organic soul. These are the same people that request research for the purpose of weaponizing everything. They have a plethora of attacks available to them that would shock most people, and this is the purpose of this piece. There's various kinds of nasty germ-laden modes for all types of warfare. I think some are fairly familiar with them now. Obviously nuclear is the most common one, but they also have neutron bombs that can do specific things. So it's not just a case like nuclear just blasts everything. There is rather clever neutron bombs that can do specific tasks. They have direct energy weapons that destroys everything except trees. For evidence of that, look at California. Heart attack inducers that has various methods of delivery. Cancer inducers, again with various methods of delivery. EMPs. Insect-sized attack drones. No, that's the future. No, that's the past. Psionics. The list is endless. But the focus is on a couple of things of how they can pull off theatre events. Now, say they bombed a Syrian school and an emergency team goes in and declares them all dead. The military then move in and remove the dead people into a holding facility. The media weighs in of this atrocity and that atrocity and sets the stage for the propaganda. Then, after a set period of time, what happens if there is a weapon that fakes death? And even a coroner will declare the people dead at the scene. Well, what if they're not dead, but just in stasis mode? All the dead people in the holding facility then wake up in total fear and total panic, which is useful for the next stage, extracting adrenaline from them. Children and parents are then separated, and then it goes on to the next stage, trafficking of all the now media declared dead people, and let's get them out the way. Now what happens after that is what's been happening on our southern border, which I outlined rather graphically in the wall piece. But what about the family or friends of the dead people? Wouldn't they want to see proof? Yes, but it was declared a chemical attack, and so declared dangerous to view your dead child or loved one. An all too convenient cover. And this is not a scenario of possibilities. This is what really takes place in this insidious plot that these psychopaths are playing out on us. So you have to be more aware that they have available to them targeted weaponry, like the sleeping dead weapon, which is used in some events. And for those who remember the series The Event, it shows you exactly how that weapon works. Fact wrapped up in fiction. Now, they also have DNA and genetic style weapons that can kill individual people or individual groups. Now, one such weapon is the black only attack. You can have a room of all coloured people and set off a weapon and only black people die. There are vaccines that can target certain people as well, and likely possible they have the same weapons for non-blacks also. But the black one was outed 3 or 4 years ago. So because of our lack of awareness of the availability of what is known as smart weapons, they can carry out most attacks and have viable cover of their tracks via coroners, and even media people can be fooled through a lack of knowledge. So I'm hoping by highlighting this tonight, and I've covered the gist of it and raised your awareness of such things, then you can these attacks and events are played out. Think Sandy Hook, think Parklands, think Las Vegas, think the Batman Theatre attack. None of those events have shown any actual proof that people died at all. Now, I don't want to hear blah blah said blah blah died. I'm talking actual proof. Or at least in the manner it was put forward. And yet so many people just accept it as fact. Why do we do that? Because the media and politicians told us so? Or the cops tell us so? Or the cops tell you, no, it didn't happen, like they said in Parkland, and then suddenly that cop dies this week. Yes, the cop that spoke out about Parklands was taken out this week, 43 years of age with no previous health issues. What? That's all a coincidence. Yeah, right. So the media and politicians tell us it all happened. And the question is, why do the people, or do the people, trust them two professions, media and politicians? And why? Why should we trust anyone or anything unless we were actually at that event and saw things for ourselves? Only then can he have some assurances of what is the truth or what not. Notwithstanding stage events that look to all and sundry like real events these days, but with the question in mind and digging deep enough, you will find the discrepancies in all the narratives. And this is where the critical mind kicks in, and why the few people in comparison who have the critical thinking ability often become targeted individuals from a young age. Critical thinkers work stuff out. They see it for what it is. They do overview. But the rest, and the bulk, you have to say, we're told to follow orders. Don't ask questions, just listen and repeat. And this is exactly how they have stupefied the masses. And that's regardless whether they're synths or not. But don't make the mistake of thinking they don't have exotic weaponry that can make people to all intents and purposes, and a recognised legitimate coroner passed them off as being dead when they're not. They do have those weapons. Basically, they're in stasis. Everything shuts down, and then they fire them back up if they have use for them. Where are we next? Yeah, let's go with this. It kind of follows on. Is who do you trust? But this is kind of played out in the Facebook pages today and other days, on certain calls that I've certain people I've spoken to, and certain questions that come up. Is who do you actually trust to tell you the truth? And that's a serious question. It's not a test, and it's not a trick question. But what I'm getting at which point does the individual end a particular pursuit of one topic of the truth? Which person's version or which organisation's version is the absolute truth? Do you know? Like I said, it's not a test or a trick question. But people are always asking for proof of this and extra proof of that. That's where I'm going with it. So, which person or which organisation do you think is putting out the absolute truth? Is it God, the Lord, a priest, politician, a news channel, an alternative media host or speaker? The question is, which is it to be? Because seriously, I would love to be given that answer. I answer questions all week and each week. But that is one particular answer that I would like back. Who is the ultimate source of truth in your mind? And the reason I ask is it seems very few really want to accept the truth, whoever it comes from. Always want an extra proof in a field that this show operates in. That extra proof is hardly forthcoming when you're asking, basically what you're asking for is presidential level documents. And yet some people seem to expect an alternative media host to hand them over to you to prove validity. Sometimes I question, do people ever stop to think about what they're asking? In essence, it could be seen that they know you can't provide certain things, and so then that person is set up to be doubted, questioned, challenged, or even dismissed as a fake. And therein lies the problem for many. No one believes in anybody, least of all themselves. We're at a point now of, even if someone was telling you the truth, too few will recognise it. You know, in a world where most things are fake, and the few who try are subjected to ridicule, ignored, threatened, or asked to provide endless streams of proof that has no ending, and people wonder why so few stay the course, or they end up quitting or being co-opted. Far easier to step out of this than to stay in it. But the problem is the people themselves. Perhaps some don't really want the truth, as then they would have to show personal responsibility. As heaven forbid, some may have to do their own research and work things out for themselves. But from my perspective, it's frustrating putting tens of hours in each week for a show and the 2 pages to have people ask the same shit that has been covered multiple times, because they can't be bothered to listen to the show, or they do listen and not bother to absorb or process the information, and then somehow expect me to spoon feed them on a daily basis. It's not fair. It comes down to your own personal responsibility, and it's a lack of trust in the self. It's not about me, it's about you. Well, you announced the sovereignty, but we need somebody else to announce it. That's what I'm getting at. What if somebody else announces it and some people don't like that person? That can't be valid again, so it has to go on to something else, or somebody else has to announce it, or this organisation has to announce it, or this government, and on and on and on it goes. And that's why I asked the question at the start. Who do you trust to deliver the truth? The absolute truth. Can you? Even in the last month, the member who ended up getting removed from the group trashed me because they felt I was somehow being critical of them in one of the pieces I do. Like I do whole shows on one member. We got people this week who wish to argue over my stance in regards to Simon Parkes. As you get back, she says she's a judge, but where's the evidence? Says she's about a lawyer, but where's that evidence? Talks to God or Yahweh. Is, or where the Chinese elders are. Well, you know what, Thomas? Just ignore all that, as we don't want infighting. Well, I thought you all wanted the full truth, not selected truth that doesn't disturb your own personal bubble. So I'll ask again, under whose banner and which platform would the truth be acceptable for it to be fully believed? It's a far trickier question than you realised. And what I'm trying to get is people to see where they're going on their own basis. Because people are always seeking and demanding more layers of proof required when it's already been given, ultimately have no trust in themselves. So you've got no trust in yourself. How can you possibly trust somebody else? And that's why you never grasp anything. That's why you never get anything. But you're frightened of making a mistake. We all make mistakes every day. The key is how you react to them or how you respond to them. But what if Thomas is wrong? Big deal. Drake was wrong. Keenan was wrong. Anna von Reitz is wrong. And all the RV people were wrong over 1,000 times. But people still listen. Why? And this issue is why, not so much that I'm being attacked. I can deal with that in most cases. It's who people trust. The answer is, well, I'm not going to give you the answer, because people need to work it out for themselves. But it'll be interesting to see who comes up with the answer. I know, subsequently, if you can't trust yourself, you can trust no one else, which leaves us with the status quo of creating a box within a box, which humanity does to itself all too well, sadly. Perhaps this song is fitting. Hi all and welcome back. That was Man in the Box, which humanity far too easily creates its own boxes. We have enough of the bigger boxes, be it constructs and the ones the cabal play games with. Too easily it is shown how we create our own boxes as well. You can't carry on wanting proof upon proof upon proof upon proof upon proof. There has to be an end goal somewhere. Who is that end goal? That's the key. And I'm going to say one more thing on Simon Parkes, and then I'm going to move on and forget about Mr. Parkes. If people want to follow Simon Parkes, be my guest. Personally, I've not listened or read his stuff for over 2 years, as to me he offers nothing. Yes, occasionally he throws in some truths, but are we that desperate and morally bankrupt for information to, one, ignore his obvious background connections, two, the fact that he's ripping off his own followers by charging for sessions and making money demands eerily reminiscent of Corey Good, and then to find out that he astrally rapes his female clients due to his abilities. The man admitted it, for Christ's sake, and then did about turn and blamed his father, who people will know as the Lord in the Bible, is actually Anu, the Draco King. We really trust the alleged son of a Draco King to deliver intel in the right manner. Really, you can't make this stuff up, and yet people defend him. Go and speak to the females he's damaged, and then come back and defend him. But if you want to follow Simon Parkes, fine. Just don't do it in my backyard, as this host is just not buying it. I have and do set higher standards of morality, and I'm not going to lower myself to those levels of coercion, no matter what he puts out as information. The astral realm. I'm going to do a piece. In fact, both of these next two pieces are kind of related, but it's not to be dabbled with. I've listened to many people over the last 5 or 6 years, both as a show host and a member of the then Universal Voice, talking about their visits to the astral realm. They're saying they've slayed this and they've slayed that, and it's all very admirable if it's true, but it shouldn't be treated as some sort of dick swinging contest. For those of you who are new to it, you have to tread very lightly, And here's why. The astral realm is fraught with dangers. It's riddled with entities who all want one thing: you and your soul essence. That's their only purpose. The only thing they can consume is your energy. That's how they survive. It kind of bothers me when people are glorifying it, when the reality is it's dangerous for a lot of people. Now, many of you will have experienced being in the astral realm, but maybe not recalled it or dismissed it as a nightmare and brushed it off. But I think everyone at some stage in their lives has recalled struggling to open your eyes whilst you're awake, or awoken in a panic or a fear, terrifying fear, or awoken with your heart pounding, a complete lather of sweat, and struggling to breathe. I can see you all nodding now. Well, these are all examples of returning from the lower astral. Now, as mentioned in previous shows, various diseases also come via the astral realm, and the most common one being cancer. All nicely piggybacked onto you through a lack of experience or a lack of knowledge of what you're actually getting into, or a lack of personal development that has become stunted via various reasons, but largely due to a lack of mastery of the self, via unintegrated shadows and inner work having not been dealt with. It leaves you wide open. And you want to know why so many people die in their sleep? Because a failure of the spirit to get back into the safety of the vessel and its own PSI field. Eventually science will catch up with that fact. Now, when the spirit leaves the vessel at night, your whole body system shuts down to minimal levels. The brain shuts down, the heart shuts down, the blood flow slows. And the spirit returns only when the vessel is fully charged up, and then it enters back in. At that point is when you wake up from sleep time. But if the spirit is fleeing and the vessel is not ready and prepared for the spirit to return, and the spirit is fleeing demonics or some other entities, and is then forced to slam back into the vessel to escape death, before the vessel is ready, this can then lead to heart attack and overload of the system. But suddenly everything has to kick into gear far too quickly, and it becomes overload. Hence the waking up with your heart pounding and also struggling for breath, because the flow hasn't started. So, yes, the astral layer can all sound so much fun, but it ain't no fun if you come back with disease, injuries, or attachments. Trust me, I know. By experience, I received a rather nasty torn shoulder injury that lasted 9 months in the physical. Now, the lower astral, where the bulk of the battling takes place for those who like to embellish the fact that they are battling, should remember that you're only stuck on that plane due to a lack of personal evolution. Lower astral is not the place to be on so many levels, but it's part of the progression through the evolutionary planes all humans must go. The key is not to stay on that level for far too long. If you progress your own personal evolution and go to the higher astral, you're not then facing those same demonics, extinct beings whose only survival depends on wandering spirits in the lower astral. This is why the powers that be want us all stuck in the lower astral, or they want us all killing each other, literally. You kill a person in any lifetime, drops you down your own personal evolutionary scale. You kill multiple, and you're stuck in the lower astral for multiple lifetimes. But the best, or the real warriors, will keep quiet about their missions, as you can then fly under the radar. Ones who out it for various reasons leave themselves wide open for attack in both realms, and I'm asking people to think about it. Yes, it may be all sound so much fun, but there's a lot of people who it's not fun. They're going through all kinds of strange experiences and disease and attacks. I'm going to read part of a post that was put in this week, and I'm going to leave certain names out, but I feel it needs to be covered. And it's about a person who's been attacked in the same way Simon Parkes has been attacking other women. And this particular person was being raped by the ones that growl. I know who she's referring to, since a child, and other paranormal things. Now, this particular other kid was 2 years old, but you could tell she was being messed with sexually. Around the same time, this person had become friends on Facebook with this so-called human being through the young girl's mother. And she started putting two and two together, and things started happening to her as well. Seeing him in my home, as well as my dreamtime and daytime visions. And when the child was 3 years old, we had some things happen to us in our bed that she talked to her about. So I went on the attack and called him out, and that's when things got really severe. Try telling anyone that an invisible man slammed you around the room and beat the crap out of you, or having the young girl scream when she's being sodomized in the bathtub, to name just a few of the details. And the ones who don't think this crap is real have no clue of what kind of lonely hell and fight this is. And part of the problem is just that. Thomas nailed my problem in Humanity Unplugged 2. Yes, I think I just covered that in the previous part. And I've got to say, my heart jumped out of my chest when I heard it. In the beginning of this fight, it nearly took me out. I slowly stood back up and using some of the tools and listening of Thomas and Chloe's advice, empowerment, I've been able to push back and hold my own with all the things I've tried until a year ago. I took 10 steps back with what I tried, but I wasn't too sure I had a plan. I was kind of pissed and fed up. I built an energetic grid around the house, anchored the hell out of it, and left my body and went after him in that place he mucks about 24/7 in my lady parts. I must have asked for help because the Indian guy or guide was next to me helping. I couldn't tell you how many times I popped in and out of my body going after him. Well, this is kind of this kind of goes into other stuff that was done. And all she could do was sit in the sun and put her feet to the ground in nature. I felt so defeated and kind of mad at myself, but it was a big lesson on energy and how to use it. The young girl is now 6. She sticks to me like glue. She won't go in any of the rooms by herself, always afraid of her own house unless I'm with her. And I don't know if I should have said all this here. Yes, you should. The person went on and said, I've been wanting to reach out to you since last year and I'm still kind of struggling to recover. Things are still out of whack, but I want to thank you and Chloe. This is a fairly harrowing story. Like I said, it was posted in our group this week. And one that is far more common than people actually think. But I want to discuss the psychological side of it. The physical pain can always be dealt with in a certain way. The psychological damage is far worse. Why? Because we the people, and subsequently society, dictates that this event is not possible, or that word again, or not normal. And it's something that festers within an individual for all of their lives. It's very damaging to the soul and also the physical vessel. But here's the problem with this scenario. A female in this case, but it has happened to males as well in our group. Who does the person on the end of the abuse go to or speak to? It's a bit like the question before. Does the person go to her parents, a partner, friends, the doctor, or the police? Knowing full well that it's unlikely any of them will believe them. Be honest. Anyone listening to this show, would you 5 years ago have believed this abused person? If honest, very few would. And the abusers know that all too well. Picture the scene. Person goes into the doctor's. I was raped in my bed. The doctor, did you see who did it? There was nobody there. Cue rolled eyes. Cue the doctor shuffling his papers about and writes down attention seeker or whack job. Doctor then looks for another clue and asks how is family life, looking for an excuse for the abused person's utterance. And no matter what the abused person says, no answer will satisfy those told. And so because most people are closed-minded, they then just declare that person insane and administer some psychotic drugs. and or then are carted off to some mental facility in some cases, which then leads to be fed all kinds of drugs and a possible loss of the children to the state. Double whammy. The same scenario applies when people see, sometimes in the physical, often off-world beings in their bedrooms. Again, no one believes them. Do you really have any idea of how that feels? When you've actually experienced something, felt it, smelt it, heard it, and touched it, and yet your eyesight fails you. So again, according to society, even though 4 of your senses worked and only 1 failed, that is enough to declare it bullshit and not real. This kind of fits in, like I said earlier, how people are always looking for extra layers of proof that has already been given to them. And it's a chronically stupid way to be and act, and something largely we do to ourselves. So the poor person who goes through this trauma of being raped is then tormented of who to confide in, only to then find out that the very few, if any, then believes them. And on top of it all that, they're declared nutty. It's the ultimate in mind fuckery for that person. Now, one hopes by doing this piece, we may give some solace to the person and any others who have faced this particular scenario. Come forward with your stories when you're ready, or if you're ready. Safe in the knowledge this group will believe and will support you. It's what we are about. Giving people their voice. Unburden yourself of the painful knowledge that has festered within for the time since the time the incidents took place. To the person who's abused, you will find it's rather liberating. In some ways, yes, it will bring pain again and upset, probably as you are writing that out, but it's also part released it, and that's the key to all traumas, and that's your key to you dealing with doing your shadow work, getting rid of that trauma and that pain and that abuse, and standing up for yourself and saying, I don't give an F whether people believe me or not. It was true for me, and that's enough. You don't need somebody else to validate your own truth. You never did. So I hope it was kind of a release for the person that did that piece, and also the start of your recovery. But at least you will have one group where you can unburden your trauma and not be doubted as a complete whack job. So let's have less of glorification of what we do in the astral and more concern of what can happen to the people who are not experienced at it. And a lot more empathy for the people who have gone through awful scenarios like this, and then not only had something that's completely off the wall, is you end up losing all your people around you, because the gist of it, it's not maybe they didn't believe you, it's more the case they can't handle the truth. It's a big, big problem. Yeah, I can handle that. Just throw it out, Thomas. And then we did the Svarley show, and many lost it. It's not something to be treated lightly. Like I've said, most of the truth is painful. Very rarely get happy truth. Most of it's painful. But it's a necessary process for the cleansing of the self and the personal development of the self. So if you want to skip away from the lower astral, the best thing you can do is work on the self. Deal with your shadow sides. Do your inner work. Learn to trust the self. Not continue to give your power away to others. Someone who trusts themselves and ignores what others think is making rapid progress on the personal development level. Or you can carry on battling extinct entities like minotaurs and centaurs. You may win many battles, but you can only afford to lose one. It's not the best place to be, and it's all about personal development and going beyond that stage. There's plenty others who haven't attained that to deal with those entities in that realm. Something to ponder on. But I hope the person who did that piece feels a little bit better within themselves after unburdening that. I'll wait for time. Maybe you'll have one more song and then we'll go into Q&A. And yeah, let's play this. Hi all and welcome back. I've just received a piece from someone who was involved 20 years ago in the Middle East, and particularly in and around Syria. And to give you an idea of what chemical weapons were involved is chlorine gas in particular was not even considered a threat, but the normal gas masks and chem suits offer adequate protection. But chemical agents expected in Syrian battlefields were VX, sarin, possibly phosgene, and definitely mustard gas. This was in the period 1996 through 1997. But chlorine is a primitive weapon and not needed on did not need any air delivery. and it's not even effective against trained troops. And the most likely use for it would be terrorism. Go figure. And the methods of delivery of it can be as simple as a container with a reactive agent and any type of nozzle facing upward to deliver the gas. All chemical weapons were removed from Syria several years ago by an international organisation. So this means it was brought in. Who does that point to? Clowns? So I hope that gives people an understanding, a better understanding of what goes on or what has gone on in Syria. Right, Q&A. Will there be any relief for seniors through Mr. Trump, Social Security or the Manor Trust? I wouldn't count on it as it stands. Like I said, things can go either way. It could all change in one day, 1 hour, 1 minute. Everything is really fluid at the moment. But there's many questions like this, and this is nothing against the person who asked the question. But individual pursuits of certain things, unless they're at the top end of the scale, will be overlooked until the time is right. I said last week, what we're dealing with is the very top end of the system. They have to be collapsed to then wield out the programs and all the humanitarian projects and all the revamping of the 489 aspects of life that will be addressed. And I know maybe finances to the seniors is important. I know money for the homeless is important, and I know money for this and money for that is important. It's important to us all. But what is being dealt with now is the very top end. And until that's cleared, and maybe, like I said, the budget being pushed to the end of September, and the other news item before, where the wall's funded through September, may be a key that between now and then is a time for things to take place. But everything will not happen overnight. It wasn't built overnight. It was built over 16,500 years. So how people expect everything to be done by tomorrow or yesterday is a bit silly. But I do understand the individual needs. We all do. But we can't deal with everything in one go. It's just not possible. I've been thinking of asking you a question about a remark you made about smoking. I just quit smoking for a couple of weeks, and I've been struggling to do that for a long time. I was so puzzled, thought, but what can I smoke then? Because I missed it very much. All cigarettes are full of poisoning stuff. Sacred tobacco, maybe, organic tobacco, only in sale in Germany, which is rather strange. I could order it. From there I found out. Now, smoking is not the issue. Cigarettes in particular, and also the vapes, the e-cigarettes, are just as bad and possibly even worse than the original cigarettes. Time will show. I don't think you're escaping it by going on them e-cigarettes. There's certain sciences suggesting it's actually worse than the original. Remember, these people want us all sick. Either all sick or all dead. So the only solution if you want to smoke is either cigars, which is natural tobacco, or the natural tobacco and roll your own cigarettes. You know, if they were interested in fixing the problem to do with cigarettes, they would have removed the alleged 400 chemicals out of them. Because actual smoking's not the issue. All the ancients all smoked. Some of the natives still do it. The shared pipe. They never got sick, did they? Very rarely, anyway. So smoking's the problem. And more people smoked in the past. Why is the sickness and death rates going up when there's far less people smoking now than there was 10, 20 years ago? Because smoking wasn't the issue. They just wanted to make it an issue. It was all about control. It's nothing to do with smoking. They're not interested in your health, otherwise they wouldn't pass all kinds of crap in pharmaceutical drugs. Tolek of the Andromeda Council, or the substitute one anyway, presented M and Ms M as having the Global Trust account. No, they don't. They admitted a digital currency was planned and they've been working with the Chinese elders. Well, you know my opinion on both of them. Who are they and what are they to the Manor Group? I'm familiar with both of those people. I have spoken to both of them. They are on a wrong path and they won't listen. And they are nothing, either of them are nothing to do with the Manor World Holding Trust or Kim. You're going to go down the path of Chinese elders and RV bullshittery, then you're not going to be part of our team. Sorry. To the person who asked about the smoking, good luck with creating your community vegetable permaculture garden. Maybe one day we'll get some funding and help it. Who or what email should I contact in regards to my organisation's proposals that I have? I keep getting a load of them and they're all very detailed, and it's not something I can deal with just now. We don't have the funding yet. Keep them, prepare them all by all means, and then when the funding is announced, then please send them to the Truth, Honour and Integrity at Gmail email, or to the peoplesclub.org. But I can't deal with those now. Same person asks a question: what is your perspective on pornography? How has it impacted society to date? You can look at it two ways. There's the degradation of females, but then there's a lot of females who get by in life because they participate in that. There's some females who are forced into it. You know, you could probably spend an hour talking about the rights and wrongs of pornography. If the people are willing participants and that's what they want to do and have themselves filmed and get paid for it, who am I to discount that? It's only when they get paid vast sums of money from 12 years ago and then make it a political statement that I have issues. Personally, I don't care who sleeps with who. But it's the oldest profession for a reason. There's obviously a need for it. And you could be argued that pornography itself prevents more attacks. male. It's not just although it's considered a male-dominated thing to watch, actually it's far more common that female members watch, not just males. And if they get satisfaction out of that, again, why should we impose on what they're doing in their own private home? Now, then you could get into some of the more seedy elements, but pornography itself, unless females are being, if they're consensual to it, is fine. If people want to watch it, that's fine. If it prevents people going raping somebody, which I believe it could do to certain individuals, then it plays a role. But then you get into the deeper elements, and like everything else, there is always a twist. Some of the elements, what they call it, BDSM, sadomasochism. To me, I find that bizarre, that you would get whipped or whatever else they do and torture you and get sexual gratification out of it. But again, just because I don't agree with it, why should I deny somebody else if they're willing and consensual participants to it? But I think the problem is when it gets into some of the more seedier elements, which obviously involves children. There's no room for that anywhere. There are people who are, for various reasons, are attracted to children. In this day and age of virtual reality, could it not be set up in a way that those people are satisfied via that, where no actual children are used, instead of them going out preying on little girls or little boys? So it could have a beneficial effect. I'd like to see whether the official rapes have gone down with the increase in pornography. It may have increased. So in essence, it then has a negative effect. What I always like to do is balance it. But if people have a problem and they feel they're going to do something to children, and we can provide a safe tool, in essence, pardon the pun, via virtual reality, where no actual live people are involved, where they can fulfill their fantasy and not traumatize children for the rest of their days. And maybe it's something that could be used. So it has many pros and cons. But there's a lot of girls who go through very traumatic lives doing it, because they have pimps and all. It gets into all the seedier sides, where they're basically just being used as a meat suit, and the pimps claim all the money and drive around in the fancy cars. That's not right. Personally, I would bring brothels back and legalise them, where then you could eliminate sexual diseases. It takes it out of the seedy behind the warehouse or in the public toilets where people are frightened to go in because there's predators and all kinds going on. If enough ask for it, which clearly they do, then why not provide it? It gives a safe environment for the person who wants to do it, a safe environment for the person who are performing the service. You can eliminate the sexually transmitted diseases and possibly eliminate a lot of the gangster issues that are surrounded with it. I hope that satisfies the answer to that. What can you tell us about the reality of the senior executive service that is purportedly the essence of the shadow government that has been blocking the people's progress? It comes under many names, deep state, you name it. It's kind of gone through the gamut of names, SES, and then there's Serco, and there's all kinds of other, everything with the name Black in it, Blackwater, Blackstone. There's an awful lot. And bringing it down to one particular name, and the latest is Senior Executive Service. It's just one part of it. And this is why we appear to be in a bit of a status, and why so many people are threatening so many others, and so many are being taken out. And it's just, it's bad, but I'm hoping we come out of it fairly unscathed. I suspect we need a big event for the people. I think that's, as time has gone on, the need for a big event to take place becomes more urgent, as I see it. Proposals for that don't involve violence have been forwarded this week, and we'll see what that brings. When will lower astral entities and demons be removed permanently from Gaia and her inhabitants? What in the world is taking so long to remove them specifically, aside from the psychos and super psychos? And I will ask how many, to the person who asked the question, and I'm not being awkward or nasty, how many have you removed? I covered this earlier. It's not a fun place to be. It has deep, deep traps in it. And it's like, it's along the lines of the same question, how long is it going to take to end the cabal, when they've been planning and plotting and scheming for 16,500 years? Those astral entities have been feeding off us for the last 78,000 years. You think of all the extinct beings, they're all in the lower astral. Dinosaurs, possibly. Minotaurs, centaurs, all the mythical beings are all in the lower astral. We're asking others to risk their lives, when you are just as capable of removing some of them as well, and maybe you have. But you can't go demanding or asking why it's taken so long to remove them. What about the people who have been misused in the secret space programs, the Monarch programs, and people who have real experiences and are trying to expose these agencies and the others who have memories of being used in these projects and are regaining memories, what will happen to them? A lot depends on whether the covens have gone down, as suspected last week. The covens operate those people largely. And there's obviously the secret space program is off-world entities which are being dealt with. The monarch programs are why we end up with so much prostitution. There's a number of females in the alt media who have been in the monarch programs, and they're not good at the moment. In fact, the actual program members are not doing good at all currently. They're struggling for various reasons. Some of them have found out that they were lied to all along. They thought they knew certain stuff and realised that they were duped as well. Of course, these people in the programs, particularly the deeper level ones, they've all been tortured and their minds split, fragmented, but been tortured, and then they've been told they're special. And because you're special, here's information nobody else has. Only to find out that they were lied to also. Because they were not special, far from it. They may have more knowledge, but they certainly weren't special, because they were bigger pawns than we are. And these program members have suffered badly. And I don't want the people to overlook that fact. But a lot of these program people that have come into the alternative media have kind of been leading people astray with the information. Some of it deliberate, a lot of it not. And regaining memories, it depends on how the individual can deal with their shadow sides and how far they've gone with their inner work. Because the problem being, as you go through the onion layers, it brings up another memory. It can also bring forward some of the back doors they insert into the brain during fragmentation of child ulcers. So, and what if that ulcer is suicidal? Unless the program member is able to overcome the ulcer, the ulcer will make that person suicide themselves. It's absolutely beyond words what these people have done. Now, admittedly, I've called a few out because they were spouting crap, Org Tellers being one of them. Now, Org has some good knowledge, except it's convoluted and not pertaining to the current timeline. Basically, what he's spitting out is a lot of the stuff from the previous loops. You know, I couldn't sit there and listen to him sending people on sideways tracks for something that's not pertaining to this current timeline. And in the end, he kind of exposed himself. It's sad to watch people go that way and completely kind of look deranged in many ways. And I do have empathy for him. We did try to help him, But when people then overlay themselves with drugs to forget the problem, it only makes the problem worse. Drugs and alcohol never solved anything, just masked it. So I wish there was a cure for all for them people, but they have a lot of shadow work to do and inner work. There's a lot of these, particularly the super soldiers. All of them have done some fairly heinous things as part of the programs. They're killing machines. You know, the honest ones like Duncan or Finian will tell you that himself. And the last thing we should be doing is glorifying them, because they have worked for the cabal, not for the people, largely. I understand from past shows that the grid net is partially down. Yep. So at the time of our individual transition out of these meat suits, what can we expect? Well, we've got to fix on the ground things first. After that, anything can happen. Literally anything can happen. But the battle we face currently is pretty much Agenda 21 or full-on freedom. It really is on a knife edge. Tunnel of light be gone. It's already gone. There is other traps with sufficient knowledge, which most have gained within this show, not only through the show but some of the documents that Chloe's done. You will be guided onto the right path. No more soul traps. Nature of the hologram is an overlay that just distorts true reality. Yes, it is. Reality is a wave frequency, and if you replicate the wave and overlay it, you then have a distorted reality. And some of this tech is that clever now, you wonder what's real and what's not. Whether we're all living in a hologram and we're all an illusion. Possible. So, in essence, holographic nature is a virtual computer game. And that has been theorized by many people. I can't say it's 100% correct one way or the other. But it is a possibility. But yes, we are or were, depending on your own personal evolution and what you believe is the truth, we were or are in an artificial construct. There seems to be renewed vigour on the net for a cosmic event. Is there going to be some sort of event or a series of events like Cobra has referred to? Or is this another 2012 loop playing out again? My opinion is events have already started. It depends on which individual part that your interests are piqued. It's like the lady before was with the astral, and then somebody else is asking for when they're going to get help for the seniors. Others are asking when's ET arriving, or when are we going to get told what we already know, that ET exists. Yeah. Others will see it as the golden age of Aquarius arriving, and others will see the angels coming down or Jesus coming down. He could go on forever on what's what. But on the ground, some events have already started. Many people resigning, many people being fired, many people being taken out. Some have the illusion of being here when they're not. Draco have gone. Parents were down to 2. Covens possibly none. Illuminati fractured into 5 factions who are now taking each other's factions out and fighting within their own faction. Politicians quitting. Banks, CEOs of all the top corporations all quitting or resigning. Is that not an event? The danger is you get fixated with one particular event, and so nothing ever happens. When if you take it as the gamut that the alternative community covers, then lots of events are happening. Pedophilia has now become part of the mainstream media. That's a big event to those who have been in this game long enough. Did we ever believe that Vatican's top diplomat would be arrested for pedophilia? Or John Podesta would be brought up, and all kinds of others. Weinstein. Again, these are big events to those who have been in alternative media long enough. To someone new, maybe it's not. They may be looking for ET disclosure, and I will tell them, you've already had it. But those people want more truth, and more proof, and more proof, and more proof. Where does the proof end? Kind of the theme for tonight. Is Trump being blackmailed to come out with all this crap on Syria again? It's a possibility at this point. We'll see. It's about time some of these assholes were seriously punished, and soon. Yeah, it's long past time for that, in my opinion. Long past time. All it takes is for people in their own positions, whatever field that may be, to do their job. The point is, the military, the police, the judges are not doing the job for the people. Because if they did, all these clowns would have been arrested by now. And maybe we should consider, as a drastic measure, is cutting off the funding to the police, the military and the judges. Why should we pay for that system that's not delivering on our behalf? Would you pay for a cable channel that never worked? Would you pay for a phone that never worked? So why are our taxes paying for military, the police, and a justice system that is only there to work for the control system? Sounds silly, doesn't it? Because it is. And it's only the awake people who are highlighting it. Well, a chunk of them anyway. I don't know what makes it any different to paying for an everyday item that doesn't work, and yet we allow government to use our money for professions, probably the 3 top professions of the control system: the justice, the police, and the military to do nothing for our benefit. Now, admittedly, there are some in all those three professions that I've highlighted that are actually trying. But what about the rest of you? In Holland, they hooked up the train from Amsterdam to Brussels to the high-speed rail. And I noticed many more countries did this too over the last 3 weeks. I'm also noticing mainstream media in Holland Inc. talking about one belt, one road. Our Premier went to China to talk business. How are things evolving your end? Like I said, there's that many things to keep up on. I haven't asked for any further information. Most of the teams now are working to do with the financial issue and the banking and trying to get the funding released. Obviously, there's a lot of work going on about the corrupt and bankrupt banks, which have to be dealt with. And that's, like I said, more the top end. If I get more information on what's going on with the train, then I will put it in the show. Should we pay on medical bills and student loans yet? You should always pay them until it changes, unless you declare yourself bankrupt or whatever. It's like there's some clowns on the internet telling people not to pay taxes. That's not a good move for someone who's classed as a terrorist to the control system. If they, it's just not a good move. It's like these people talking about, I'm claiming my sovereignty. Yeah, good luck with that. It's like Heather Giraffe claiming birth certificates. You see what happened to her. I'm not advising anyone to do anything in that manner. No, well, we don't need driving licenses. And yes, that is 100% correct. And you don't have to attend court. That's also 100% correct. It's a request. But you try carrying it out, and you'll end up right behind bars. We have to just carry on as the system is until it flips sufficient, where people then have the confidence to then go, you know what, you can stick it. Because otherwise they'll pick us off, and then there's nothing left, because the cents won't save us. Guarantee that. If America government owns all the banks and all the banks are going to have the same rules, wouldn't it be better to integrate all under one name and make it easier for all? It could well be. Maybe they'll call it the People's Club Bank. Who knows? Not Wells the Fargo, as in what the... yep. Is the same ET that's controlling the flow of energy to Gaia going to place the rods? ETs are not necessarily controlling the flow of energy. There was spheres, but nothing to do with sphere beings or sphere alliance. That's a co-opting that was controlling the flow through this particular solar system. A group of white spheres and a group of blue spheres. Long before Cody Goodkin came on the scene with his bullshit. Because it was too much, the initial flow, which started in 2002. those spheres, as I understand, are not around anymore. There's no need to filter it, and so they haven't been seen for at least 3 or 4 years. Before Corey came onto the scene with his bullshit. I've run over again. How many more questions? I know you've referred to a dome of the city, Toronto, several times. Can you please tell me more about it and why it's there? Well, you were right the first part. I have mentioned it several times. It's a dome over certain parts. It has numerous purposes. Some are perhaps not best outed. It's kind of going out on a limb mentioning certain cities. It is what it is. It's not good. And perhaps there's certain things below that dome that you would kind of shit your pants if you walked into. Maybe that's why it's domed. What could be meant by Trump folding his arms while sitting and commenting on certain issues? No idea, sorry. Messing with time, how does that work? Rather clever tech. Doesn't belong here or in this particular sector. And magic. How does the use of free will work in conjunction with pre-planned soul contracts? Well, it depends on who you did your soul contract with. If it was with the Draco, was that free will? Do you think you had free will now? This kind of goes into the piece I did last week on free will. How it can work for you, but it can also work against you. All of us in the alternative community want the truth and want a better world, or both. And our free will is being impinged on. But the fact that the majority, whether they're synths or they're not, seem to think that life's hunky-dory and it's okay to be a slave and to be in famine and in disease, and 350,000 children die each week, then free will in its raw form has worked because the majority don't care. So it's up to the individual to correct if they feel that their soul contract has been manipulated, which, as I understand, most of them were, if not all, then it's up to you to then have it changed. Along with feeling energized and light, I also thought that my powers would be returning. Which powers, I don't know, just powers would be returning. Does that also happen when clearing your shadow side as well as the incoming energy? Depends on what you determine as powers. Abilities are more to do with not being in the astral. Once you go onto the mental planes, different abilities are available, but not to all. Some may never get the abilities back, some do. There's no, I don't really know the reason for that. Maybe it's just some people have different DNA, or a different soul essence, or they originated from a different place. There could be numbers of reasons for it. But there's no guarantee that you will get certain abilities or certain powers. It's all about practice and also what you believe. So if you believe you're going to get powers back, there's a stronger chance that you will rather than you won't. It's been a common theme tonight, is what you believe. What is truth? Who is the ultimate in truth? Why doesn't Trump go to Camp David very often? Camp being the operative word is probably why he doesn't go. In Holland, 5 cities will be a test case for 5G. I see many trees being removed in and around The Hague. They seem to interfere with this kind of energy. Yes, 5G won't go through walls, so they've rolled out. Then we're going to end up with a plethora of towers. And this person goes on to say, I'm worried. Can you say something about this and what we can do about it? This again comes down to your free will, doesn't it? You have the right to complain, but can you get sufficient to complain with? It's that free will again, isn't it? If people sit there and choose to ignore all the dangers around them, to me that's imposing on our free will. But from an overview point of view, if everyone's happy with it, what can we do? On a free will basis, that's where free will works against us. Unlike most things in life, no matter what level you're at, it always seems to work against anyone wanting to improve humanity or themselves. The key is stacking the odds against them. Well, you know, one of the saddest things of the alternative community, which has kind of grown over the last 8 or 9 years, it is the lack of coordination between all the various groups. And yes, there's elements that like to cause division, and yes, there has been co-opted people, but it doesn't mean to say that the listeners should be co-opted and not join up groups. Even in our own community, I'm not listening to him, or I'm not listening to it, or whatever. My show's better than your show, so I'm not following you. It's not saved as well as it. The alternative media should be a lot more congruent with each other than it is, given so many are love and light. But no. And that's kind of the problem, because we should by now have developed a collective voice, like I tried with the lawyer people, Von Reitz, John Darash, and Judge Nadeau. They all ended up trashing each other over one particular item. No, it's natural law. No, it's cosmic law. No, it's this law, common law. What about just scrap all that and just call it the people's law? Who cares? But now people will argue points, and they wonder why everything kind of rolls on in life. You think about what I've covered tonight. People demanding proof, and then demanding proof on top of proof, and more proof on top of that proof. People not trusting themselves. And so ultimately you've got no chance of trusting anyone else. People that desperate for information, they will allow themselves to become morally bankrupt of someone who's admitted a crime and allowed them to get away with it because he gives a bit of intel out. Or she. Not just males have done it. And people ask, where's my free will? It's within you. Always was. The truth is within you. Always was. A better version of you is in you. Always was. You've just forgotten. So I hope tonight's show kind of makes people rethink where they're at themselves. The harrowing story of the woman and the member and the girl, young girl, being attacked by someone they couldn't see. At least that person now feels safe in coming forward and speaking of those issues. It's important to provide that platform and not be judged before they have a chance to tell the story. Because we've all been judged harshly in the alternative media, every one of us. Oh, they're talking about that conspiracy again. And yeah, we don't like that type of rejection, and yet still play out games within themselves by demanding proof that's already been given. And a never-ending path to the truth when they don't have an end goal of who that person, that organisation, that group is to deliver it. We are better than that, and we have to think better than that. Because if you continue to mindfuck yourself of demanding proof you've already had, you're never going to find the truth, ever. Because there is no level of truth that's going to satisfy that type of mindset. And the question is, if that's what you're doing, then you're wasting your time in the awake community. Because it's not truth you seek. It's truth you're hiding from yourself. Think about it. I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Yes, there was no intel. Well, there was some bits that were key intel in some ways. There was none directly into the show tonight, but there's enough there again got people pondering on. And like I say, we have to start coming together in a better way than we are currently. We have to start pooling our resources, not to divide and conquer, but to go forward with a common goal. And everything, all the different individual niches that people want. I want rid of the chemtrails, or I want rid of this, and I want this, and you need more money for this people, that group, and that funding, and that program, and that humanitarian, and on it goes. You can't do that and continue to mess with your own head. Continue to ignore your own development. Continue to ignore your own traumas. and not integrate your own shadows. You can't do that. So I'm going to end tonight's show with the song says it all. Are you wise enough? And we have to be a lot wiser going forward than I've witnessed over the last few months. We really do. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.